Hey there, Mr. Redder here. Welcome back to another episode of r/Entitled People Stories. Our first story we'll be reading today: Hunt frogs on our farm, have fun in prison. And after that, am I the jerk for not returning to my childcare job because the mother fired me over a mistake? Now for every thumbs up this video gets, one Karen doesn't get to name her baby. Wait, what? So please smash that like button and subscribe and turn on notifications for new stories from Reddit every single day. Hunt frogs on our farm? Have fun in prison. This is another story about Pops, my grandfather, and how he got some sweet, sweet revenge on squatters and poachers. This goes way back to the 90s, to be exact 1998. I was 10 years old. My farm back then was Pop's family farm. It's way up north in Ontario. My farm is not a small farm in the area. It's the biggest plot of land. Not only that, it has the most workable farmland. There's about 80 acres of good workable farmland that's including pastures and another 120 acres of dense forest and marshland. It's in northern Ontario. Back in the 90s, northern Ontario had a breakout of this type of moth. They would spin silk high in the trees. Really, they caused no harm other than a nuisance, but the government had the great idea to crop dust the forests on Ontario, causing an ecological disaster. With the loss of the moths and the chemicals in the water, a type of frog was nearly wiped out. We called them leopard frogs. They're green with these big black spots on them. After that, they were put on the endangered species list. The back end of my property runs off into a small marshland and into the lake, and back in the 90s, Pops was having a problem with poachers. They were camping in the back area, hunting out of season and eating turtles out of the marsh and just messing up the property. Back in the day, that forest was my playground. I know that area like the back of my hand, but unfortunately, I had a run-in with the poachers. So of course, I went out there with my Pops and our local lawman, but they had packed up and were gone before we got there. Unfortunately, they returned the week after. Pops tried to find them with the lawman several times, but with no luck. Now here's where all the information from the start comes into play. Pops, as hard as he tried, wanted them gone, but it wasn't working. Pops was also a fisherman, and his favorite bait were bones, other than the leopard frog. But because they made it on the endangered species list, the use was outright banned. Pops, being the responsible fisherman and generally caring about the land, figured, oh well, now's the time to get two birds with one stone. He approached the Canadian Fishery and Game Wardens and through a lot of work got in touch with an ecological survey team who decided that our little marsh was the perfect place for a spawning pool to raise little leopard frogs. And that's what happened. The back area where our marsh was fenced in, and they started bringing tadpoles to brood in our marsh. Not only that, the poachers' hunting ground happened to fall in the protected zone. Once the work happened, it took a full year for the poachers to return. But Pops had a weapon now, his phone. Once he could hear that familiar sound of shots going off, where no fires should be made, a single phone call to the game warden. They had over a dozen wardens up there in less than an hour, and the poachers were caught. Not only were they caught with the carcass of a bear and other animals, they were found with buckets and buckets of our little leopard frogs. They were caught, but not only did they hunt without a license, they also poached an endangered species to be used as an illegal bait. From what we learned through the locals, they did 2 years in big-time prison, all because Pops cared about the little froggies. Oh yeah, over 5 million of the frogs were raised on that marsh over 10 years, being released throughout marshes and forests in Ontario. You would have a hard time finding a leopard frog across Ontario that was not somehow related to a frog that came out of my little marsh. Am I the jerk for not returning to my childcare job because the mother fired me over a mistake? I, 19 male, had a job taking care of 2 kids who were 2 and 3, a dog, and doing light housework 4 days a week for a single mom who got my contact info from a business card I had posted in my dad's pediatric therapy office. Ever since the weather started getting warmer, the dog has been shedding like crazy. Like, I would vacuum the couch, and the next day it would look like I hadn't. I would lightly tug on the dog's hair and would pull out huge tufts. The dog's been scratching all the time, etc. My dad's dog has a double coat like theirs, and one morning when I was leaving for work, I packed his brushing tool in my bag. When the kids were napping, I spent a full hour outside brushing the dog. The dog seemed to enjoy being brushed, and after an hour, there was a huge pile of hair that had been brushed out. Before vacuuming it up, I sent the mom what I thought would be a funny text saying, "Brushed a whole new dog out of the dog's coat." Looking back, I realized that maybe I should have asked first, but at the time it seemed like something that was within the scope of caring for the dog. The mom went ballistic. She called me, yelling, saying that by brushing the dog and not letting the hair fall out on its own, I was causing harm somehow. She said I was an idiot and she can't believe she trusted me with her kids and that today was my last day. I was extremely upset because I had been with the family for 3 months and she had never yelled at me like that before. I left as soon as she got home because she was still fuming. I immediately lined up a job with another family and am supposed to start on Monday. The mom who yelled at me called me 2 days later, saying that she was very sorry about the misunderstanding and that firing me was an overreaction. I told her I was no longer available and she started crying about how hard it was to find a new sitter for her special needs kids. When I stood firm, she started texting my dad and asking him to do something. My dad is annoyed at being dragged into this, and while he respects my decision, he wishes I would keep watching her kids for a short time to keep the peace. I hate that I put anyone in an awkward position, but I also don't want to work for someone like that. Am I the jerk? Edit, because I don't want to have to keep clarifying. My dad is not an ABA therapist, he's a physical therapist. Not the jerk at all. Your dad is kind of lousy for putting this on you. He's a therapist and he can't see the instability of the mother and how it endangers you? I mean, if this is how she reacts to a completely normal thing to do with a dog, God forbid anything ever go wrong with one of the kids. You're an adult, and accusations against you could lead to legal problems. Stay far away from her. OP. I should have clarified, my dad isn't a mental health therapist, and he is mostly on my side. He's just annoyed that she's making her business his business just because we have the same last name. Good point about the legal problems. It's so weird because I've had things happen with the kids. Bumped head, scraped knee, and she was totally reasonable about it. Maybe she was just having a really bad day, but I don't want to risk it. Not the jerk. First, brushing a dog who is growing their coat does not hurt the dog, and the fact that she thinks it does is kind of disturbing. Second, even if she believes it hurts the dog, it's something that most dog owners do. So rather than simply telling you that she prefers not to have it done, she had a fit at a 19-year-old babysitter. This is not a person you want to continue working for. I wouldn't want to go back and have her accuse me of things based on her crazy beliefs. Not the jerk. What kind of idiot thinks it's harmful to brush a dog? The dog was probably relieved to be rid of that loose hair. Build my fence and do it exactly as I designed. So I've posted several stories about my pops, my grandfather, on Reddit over the last week, and well, some people seem to like them. Pops was an old school, rough as nails WW2 vet farmer. Not only that, in my small town in northern Ontario, Pops and his brother were the only contractors in town. Pops took a job from an out-of-towner, some rich guy from Toronto who purchased a small plot of land on the lake for his vacation home. This guy hired Pops to put up a fence all around the house, a 6-foot-high monster fence. The thing is still up today. It's really ugly and completely out of place with the natural beauty of the area. From day one, while marking out lines, this guy was a real jerk to Pops, a real nitpick who thought himself as a top-tier designer. Pops went to the guy because of a problem with his design, and the guy didn't give a hoot. When Pops tried to point out the problem, the guy was like, "I don't care about your opinion. I paid you. You work for me. Get it done. I have guests coming up at the end of the month, so get it done. Don't call me with any problems. Just get it done." Pops, being Pops, he just gave an okie dokie. Can I get that in writing? The guy did just that, and Pops did exactly what he wanted. The guy got his fence built. Pops told one of the townies that lives near the road leading to the place to give him a call if he sees Mr. Moneybags show up. It took 3 weeks, and the guy showed up with his entire family in tow. Pops got a call from the townie telling him, "Hey, you're about to get a visitor." Well, as I said, Pops followed the directions exactly as written, a fence completely around the house, about 40 feet away from the place. What the plans didn't have was an opening for the driveway or any gates to get in. I wish I was there to see the guy's face when he got to his nice vacation home. I would have loved to have seen his face when he showed up to the farm to tell off Pops. When Pops told me this story, he said he was sitting on the front porch sipping on his whiskey as that guy rolled up. The guy screamed at Pops, calling him a dumb jerk, and Pops just smiled and said, "Remember when you told me to build it exactly as you designed?" If you don't like it, redesign it and fix it yourself. As I said, the guy still owns the place and he stays far out of town. And that fence is still up today. It's really ugly, but it has stood the test of time. Oh, I also know I have horrible spelling and grammar, and I'll be straight with you. I not only left school for a GED at 16, school was no good for me. I also have a learning disability, so bear with me. Edit. Forgot to add, they had to go down to the general store and buy a chainsaw to cut their way in. Am I the jerk for telling my coworker the real reason why nobody wants to go to her place? So I, 27 female, am a teacher at a high school. The department I'm in likes to stay close and social with each other, so we do these potluck hangouts sometimes. My place has been dubbed the Fun House, as everyone likes the old school games I have, as it gives them a sense of nostalgia, and me and my boyfriend's cooking is great. I have this coworker, let's call her Pam, who desperately wants to host one, but always gets shot down. I asked another teacher why, and they told me her place stinks. Literally. I didn't believe it till I went there to pick up my game system. It's a very foul, strong, and noticeable smell, but Pam seems to not notice it. Not too long ago, we had a February break, and all the teachers decided it would be nice for another get-together. Pam offered her place again, but the teachers said they would prefer my house. Pam protested for a bit, then finally agreed. On the day of the get-together, while me and my boyfriend were cleaning, Pam comes hours early and later on begins to study my cleaning methods. Pam then makes comments on how I clean with too many products. I shrug it off and said that's how my mom taught me to clean. She then goes on this rant about how being overly clean is not a good thing and tries to label what I'm doing as a disorder. I then ask her about her cleaning habits. Pam tells me that she doesn't use any products, just a rag and hot water. She doesn't change out trash bags unless they show signs of tear and doesn't mop, just sweeps. Me and my boyfriend exchanged looks, but didn't say anything. At this time, the get-together starts and everything is going fine until Pam starts to tell everyone about how I clean and tries to make a joke of it. Everyone awkwardly laughs, but she just keeps going with this bad joke. Annoyed, I then tell her that maybe she should use me as a model on how to clean her house. She asks me what do I mean by that. I held my tongue until she started complaining about why no one wants to come to her place, especially since her place is a nice condo, and mine is just a small house on the odd side of town. I then tell her the truth, saying that her place smells awful. She thought I was making a cruel joke and laughed till she noticed how everyone was silent. This sent her into a rage, and she calls everyone fake and calls me a jerk for making up such a crazy lie about the smell of her place before storming off. Pam has stopped talking to all of us and even skips out on our Monday meetings. I tried talking to her in private, but she just gets mad. Maybe I should have kept my mouth shut like the others. Am I the jerk? Not the jerk. She sat there and criticized your normal cleaning habits. It's a two-way street. She's more than likely just embarrassed for not realizing that she's dirty. Not the jerk. She walked right into that one. Although the kinder thing would have been that another teacher at this school would have brought up this issue in private after Pam repeatedly tried to host events. Everyone sucks here. She was being rude, has a dangerous mentality about her own cleanliness. But was it necessary to call her out in front of everyone else? I might have changed the subject because Pam was making a jerk of herself, and I'm guessing that no one else felt that her criticisms of you were valid. Instead, you said the quiet part out loud and humiliated her. When you socialize with the same people you work with, sometimes you read the room and realize that no good will come from putting her down. She may also have some very odd issue and that she can't smell things very well, or perhaps she was brought up that way, which would be even more condemning to her. I like this reply. Sometimes people seem to think that if someone is being a jerk, they're justified in crushing them, no matter what. Obviously, Pam was so wrong, but clearly every one of the others in the group understood what OP does not. Some things are better left unsaid, but if it needed to be said, it should have been in a private conversation. Well, what do you think? Did OP take it too far or not? Please let us know.
No, Pam got exactly what she deserved. You let people get away with this crap forever and they'll never stop doing it.
Bin everything in this room? You got it, boss. Not my own malicious compliance, but overheard, then witnessed at work. A few months ago, the two owners at my work had a huge disagreement which has escalated to full-blown screaming matches in the middle of the office and nearly into several physical fights. It came to a head last Friday, and owner A decided to pack it all in and leave effective immediately. After lunch, owner B called the warehouse manager up to the office and pointed at owner A's office, situated just off the main open plan office, and said, "I'm just too stressed to deal with this, so I'm going home. Bin everything in that room. I don't want to see a shred of evidence that owner A worked here when I get back on Monday morning." The warehouse manager looked at the offending office and back to owner B. "Are you sure you want to bin everything, boss?" Owner B looked ready to explode already, and apparently this extra bit of clarification sent him over the edge.
Did I stutter? Get rid of everything in there, or you can clear out your desk too.
And so owner B stormed off, and our warehouse manager took out his walkie-talkie and summoned up 2 of his warehouse staff and relayed the instructions. The warehouse workers questioned it and got the same answer. Yes, absolutely everything. And so they got to work. Owner A's personal effects were put into a box and sealed up to be taken to him by one of the purchasing staff who lived nearby. Everything else was bagged up and put into the bins. The paperwork and stationery were boxed up to be shredded and destroyed. Next, the monitor and printer were taken to the bins, followed by the desk and chair. When I left at 4 p.m., the warehouse workers were just starting to take down the wall-mounted bookshelves. I would have expected them to stop there, but when I got in this morning, there was nothing in the office. The curtains and blinds are gone, plug sockets and light fittings taken off the walls, leaving exposed wires, and tiles removed from the ceiling, showing the ductwork and wiring above. The carpet that owner A requested be put in was torn up, leaving the underlay. Even the door with owner A's name plaque on it was taken off the hinges. It looks like a construction site in there. Owner B came in at 10 this morning, took one look at it, and started screaming his head off and demanding to see the warehouse manager. He wanted whoever did this to put this right and then get off site as they were fired. If no one owned up, then the whole warehouse shift was fired. Our warehouse manager, never one to give a hoot, just peered into the office and said, "You said bin everything, boss. Looks like they did," and walked off. Owner B looked like he was going to burst a vessel. Am I the jerk for kicking out my sister completely from my house when my nephew broke my son's things? Finding out about my son James was a huge surprise for me 8 months ago. He's 6 and I'm 28, male, still adjusting to it. My sister lives with me, by the way. She's been here over a year because lockdown pretty much ruined her business. My sister couldn't afford the rent anymore for her store. Her and my nephew, AJ, who's 9, moved to my place. Right now she's working, but not enough hours to earn her own place. Now, it doesn't really bother me that they're living with me. Sometimes AJ can be a lot though. She has a bad habit of spoiling him too much due to his dad not being around. After finding out about James and having him over more often, AJ has hated he's not the only kid in the house anymore. 3 months ago, my son's grandma, who's his legal guardian, had to undergo surgery. She's still recuperating, so it's going to take some time for her to do more physically. In the meantime, James came to live with me. He's already gone through enough in his life, and I just want to make the process easier on him so he feels comfortable with me as his dad. My place is a 3-bedroom, so before it was each in their own individual rooms, but I told my sister to move AJ's things in with her. Of course, my nephew had a fit, and she was mad because he's lived there longer than James. I normally don't play my house, my rules, but for my son I did. She's still pretty bitter about it. AJ doesn't tolerate James around at all. He's mean to him for no reason. One time at breakfast, he pushed James because he wanted to sit where he was sitting. I've had talks with AJ to get him to understand, also with my sister to get her kid under control. Because for one, James' grandma and I are working out a custody arrangement, so him living here was always going to happen regardless of her condition, which meant he'd always get his own room. My sister doesn't do much because she says it's my fault for bringing James in, knowing that this would devastate AJ. On Tuesday, AJ came to James' room and pulled everything out. His clothes from his drawers, broke some of his toys, and the ones that upset him the most is he broke his lava lamp that my son loves. His mom bought it for him a few years ago, and he uses it as a nightlight. I was just so mad for my son because he was crying. It made me react badly on my sister for not stopping it in the first place, but she says she was in the garage. Straight up just told her AJ can't be here anymore, and they need to get out since she obviously can't parent him to control himself. My sister pleaded with me not to because they don't have anywhere to go. We're cut off from family. but I still told them they had to go. They left the next morning. Right now, she says that they have to stay on a friend's couch. She won't stop telling me how awful it is that I threw them out. Now they're struggling even more. I wanted to help them, but nothing was being done about AJ, and it just made me snap. Am I the jerk? AJ is 9 years old, which means he's old enough for his mom to have a conversation with him about his behavior. Not the jerk. Give James a big hug and let him pick out a new lava lamp of his choice. OP. He was really upset about that. It hurt, and it sucks he doesn't want another one because to him, it won't be the same. You're not the jerk, and it's pretty obvious. Your sister seems to think she owned the house you were all living in. AJ was there longer? Bringing your kid to live with you would upset AJ? What a weird thing to say. The world does not revolve around her and her kid, especially when staying in someone else's home. So she's allowed to have a kid around, but you can't? In your house? Your sister has issues and needs to be taught how to parent. Your son being subjected to bullying is not okay. Giving your sister a chance to discipline her kid before kicking them out for real would have been fair, but I don't blame you for your reaction. I agree with all of this, except the last part. The sister has had 8 months to discipline her kid and chose not to. This wasn't an overreaction to a one-time event. It was the straw that broke the camel's back. No more chances owed, not the jerk. Am I the jerk for not following an old tradition regarding the name of my son? My family has a lot of traditions that come from generations ago, like dishes we eat certain days, or give a boutique to every woman on their birthday, etc. All those traditions are based on a couple from generations ago. I have a great relationship with my dad. He's always been very attentive and supportive to me. Not that his tradition would have let him do otherwise anyway. My fiance and I are going to be parents soon, and my parents are very hyped about it. They already gifted me some stuff for the baby and all. The drama started yesterday when my dad asked me to talk in private. He said he was proud of me, that I was going to be a good father and all of that stuff. Then he said he was going to be there for whatever I, my fiance, and little Timothy VI needed. Timothy is my name, as well as my dad's. One of the old traditions is that the first son inherits the name of his father, who inherited the name of his father, and so on. The same happens with the first daughter of each generation, but it's another name, of course. The thing is, my fiance and I already decided a name for our son, and it'll be Aiden, not Timothy. Neither of us like that name, so that's out of the options. I corrected my dad, and he seemed surprised at first, but then said it was a cute name, and that what he said stayed the same anyway. This morning, I got a call from my mom asking me why I didn't want to continue the family tradition, and that I made my dad cry. I told her that although I feel bad for my dad, I wasn't going to change the name my fiance and I picked. Am I the jerk? Well, what do you think? Is OP the jerk, or is his mom? Please let us know. Am I the jerk for telling my dad the reason I don't respect him is because stepmom always tells him what to do? Title sounds bad, but hear me out. I, 16 female, live with my dad, 38 male, and now new stepmom Amanda, 31 female, and step-siblings Kate and Bo, who are 9 and 11. My dad has this problem where he just totally bows down to whatever woman gets with him. Every girlfriend he's ever had since my mom passed when I was 7 has been the one calling the shots with him. They'd complain about anything, and he'd end up handling it to please them so they'd stick around. It doesn't help that he's only ever dated one crappy woman after another. Within the last few years, I've stopped listening to my dad or any of his girlfriends when they try to boss me around, on the girlfriend's orders usually, because I'm tired. Dad has said I'm going through the rebellion phase, like I'm just being an angsty teen with no real problems. Amanda has taken issue with my bad behavior and is constantly criticizing me and complaining to my dad to straighten me out, and so he's constantly on my case too. It all came to a head this week when Amanda got mad at me for not letting her kids play with my NES. It's old and delicate, and her kids are not. I told her to buzz off, and if she wanted to keep her kids entertained, then she can let them play with her Switch, which she won't because they'll break it. So after that, she stormed off crying to my dad, who stormed into my room to complain at me for being so darn disrespectful to him and his wife. He said I needed to learn some respect for him, but I just lost it and cut him off by screaming at him. I said I don't respect him because he's a chronically whipped loser who would rather coddle his jerk wife than stand up to her BS. He looked really offended and got quiet before yelling that I was grounded, Then he stormed out, slamming my door. Later, my grandma called and said I was being childish and need to shape up, and apologized to my dad because he keeps a roof over my head and food in my stomach, and that's no way to treat him. Am I the jerk? Be quiet, don't speak, just take a seat and don't say a word. Okay, no problem. A little backstory. This takes place in late 2014, and I was pretty fresh out of university at my first real job post-graduation. I landed a junior position for a construction firm putting up the condos around the greater Toronto area at the peak of the condo boom. I was lucky enough to be assigned to the lead safety team, and the lead engineer was my direct supervisor. The company I was working for had just scored a huge contract to re-engineer/fix the balcony's glass on several condo buildings in the downtown area, all managed by the same management company. The reason is, the glass they used on the balconies had a tendency to randomly shatter, sending thousands of tiny pebble-sized shards of glass raining down 10 to 35 stories. The official reason was a manufacturing defect. The real reason was prioritizing form over function. The company that built the buildings didn't factor in all of the vibration from the high winds and the heat from the city, and the solution was literally 5 centimeters of rubber, a thicker shatterproof tempered glass, and millions of dollars. But with that out of the way, I was employed in the safety department. We had a difficult time with the design/art department. They cared about form over function and safety. We were at the tail end of a project and about to break ground on a condo development. 2 35-story buildings surrounded by townhomes just off the lakeshore. Unfortunately, to the art department's dismay, we had to add in a wind wall right where the building was situated. It was a high wind zone because of the lake and the highway. There was this wind tunnel that would pass the back road of the building, and winds at 100 kilometers plus. It's fast enough to knock you off your feet, but the design department hated it and thought it was ugly and cost sales. After months of back and forth between the two departments, my boss set up a meeting with the design department and put me in charge of doing the presentation, the new junior engineer, because in all honesty, it was just not an important thing. It was just to get them off of our backs. Well, it comes to the day of the presentation, and I show up a little bit early to set up, and I go find the boss of the department. I had never met the man before. Well, I get to his desk and try to introduce myself. I was met with a, "Be quiet, we're waiting for one of the dummies from upstairs. Just be quiet and don't say a word and take a seat." So that's what I did. I texted my boss and explained what happened, and he said just wait. Don't say a word and just wait. So I did. 20 minutes passes and you can see the boss getting visibly agitated. Another 20 minutes passes and the man is seething with rage and makes a call. My boss texts me and he says the guy is going to call you in a few minutes. You have permission to say what you want. Well, I'm sitting in the dead silent meeting area and the boss makes a big spectacle of coming out and saying, "Everyone be quiet. I'm going to call this jerk and see what's the holdup." Well, my phone starts to ring and I answer. Before the guy says a thing, I spoke. "I'm sorry, I can't talk right now. I am trying to start a meeting, but some idiot won't let me." And I hung up. The man's face went red. He didn't stay around for the meeting. He went to try to chew my boss out. It didn't work, and the meeting went off with no problems, and it ended the issue with the design department. I only stayed at that job for about a year until my boss recommended me for a better job, lead safety at a different company. I stayed with them until last year when I decided to do my own thing. Entitled mother thinks her son gets a free birthday cake just because it's his birthday. This happened a few years ago. My family and I were eating at a restaurant and were simply amused onlookers and weren't involved in the whole incident. We were seated in an area of the restaurant that had 4 moderately sized tables, 3 of which were occupied by my family, a nice family and an entitled family. We were all in close enough proximity that we could easily hear what was being discussed at the other tables. The days before lockdown. And I learned that it was the daughter of the nice family's birthday. I think she must have been either 5 or 6. The birthday girl's parents had handed over a birthday cake to the restaurant servers before being seated earlier on to surprise her after eating their main meal. And so a few servers brought the cake out while singing happy birthday to the girl and had lit the candles for her, and the kid was adorable and super happy. Now, the cake looked like a kid's sugary dream come true. It was super colorful and looked delicious. Unfortunately, the kid on the entitled family's table also thought the cake looked delicious and was eyeing it like a hungry little gremlin. The entitled mother spoke up to one of the servers after they had all finished singing happy birthday and said,
Excuse me, it's my son's birthday. Are you gonna bring us our birthday cake?
Now, her son must have been a little older, like 8 or 9, and I don't know this for sure, but from the brief confusion turned mischief on his face, I'm going to assume it wasn't actually his birthday. The poor waitress looks puzzled and says, "Oh, I'm sorry, we were only given one cake earlier. What's your name? And do you remember who you gave the cake to?" The entitled mother looks at her like she's grown a second head and snaps,
What are you talking about? It's my son's birthday, and he deserves a free birthday cake just as much as that girl does.
At this point, me and my sister both understand that this woman thinks the restaurant supplied the birthday cake instead of the family giving it to them beforehand, and we cover our mouths, trying not to laugh at this woman's idiocy. The waitress catches on too and continues to explain politely that the entitled mother has misunderstood the happy birthday celebration that the servers gave the girl on the other table, and this entitled mother looks super upset, probably realizing that she's made herself look like a right idiot.
Well, my son should get a free dessert anyway. It's his birthday.
Entitled mother tries to avoid embarrassment by dialing up her entitlement. "I'm sorry, ma'am, but we don't offer free desserts here for any reason," the waitress responds. I know full well that in actual fact, the servers sometimes give out very small free desserts on occasion, usually on birthdays, but only when the families are being kind and appreciative, because my youngest sister once received one. I'm talking like one scoop in a little bowl with some sprinkles and some whipped cream. But hey, free dessert. But obviously, I was gonna remain quiet and keep watching this lady embarrass herself. And embarrass herself she did. She started kicking up more of a fuss and throwing a tantrum, and even encouraged her son to make a fuss too. The dad on their table looked like he was thinking about filing for divorce, but otherwise remained silent instead of telling his wife to knock it off. Eventually, the manager was summoned, and this entitled woman proceeded to shout some more until she was told that if she didn't stop shouting, she would be asked to leave. At this point, she had ordered food, but hadn't received it yet, and thankfully, she shut up. She kept muttering under her breath about how she was gonna leave a bad review, and even had the gall to ask the nice family for some slices of their daughter's cake. Obviously, they said no, especially after seeing how they had treated the poor waitress, and it was super satisfying to see the entitled mother get shot down again.
Support our channel by joining as a member today, and we'll give you a shout out in our next video.
Or come watch this video next. You won't believe what Karen does in that one.